Have you ever wondered what could drive a person you consider kind, compassionate, and highly moral to commit something terrible, even monstrous? Imagine someone you admire and trust suddenly becoming completely different, unrecognizable. And what if it turned out that this isn't an isolated incident, but a pattern repeating throughout human history? Today, we delve into one of the most complex and disturbing questions about human nature. Why do good people sometimes do bad things? By the end of this exploration, you'll understand the astonishing mechanisms that push ordinary people down a path of darkness. But most importantly, we'll understand how to recognize and resist these forces, and that knowledge will be the most valuable and inspiring of all. This journey will take us through psychological experiments, historical events, and philosophical reflections, exposing the fine line that separates good from evil. Prepare to learn what truly makes good people do bad things and how we can resist it. The resolution to this question may change your perception of human nature forever. This story isn't just about the fates of other people. It serves as a magnifying glass, calling for self-analysis and provoking the question, how would I act in a similar situation? Would I be able to withstand the pressure of circumstances? Stay with us, because today's deep dive has the potential to radically change your worldview and your perception of yourself. We're going to talk about the Lucifer effect, a concept that gained widespread recognition thanks to the work of psychologist Philip Zimbardo, particularly his famous Stanford prison experiment. The results of this study were extremely disappointing. The environment, social roles, and unquestioning obedience to authority can turn even the most decent citizens into agents of evil. Think about it. Human history is full of examples where ordinary people committed horrific atrocities. Remember the guards at Nazi concentration camps? Soldiers who participated in ethnic cleansing, or even those who passively watched the atrocities unfold. After all, these people weren't born evil. Often they were unremarkable ordinary people, caught up in a whirlwind of events that awakened the darkest sides of human nature. The reasons for this behavior are rooted in the complex interaction of psychological and social factors that determine human actions. First of all, it's necessary to consider the influence of authority. The classic experiments of psychologist Stanley Milgram, conducted in the 1960s and dedicated to the phenomenon of obedience, clearly demonstrated people's willingness to commit acts that go against their moral principles if it comes from a figure with power. In the experiment, subjects were asked to administer electric shocks to another person who was actually an actor faking pain. The results were shocking. A significant number of participants continued to increase the voltage, even knowing that they were causing serious harm, simply because they were told to do so. In this regard, the question arises, how often in everyday life do we blindly follow instructions without critically reflecting on them? We're talking about orders from superiors, leaders, or even unspoken social norms. And what will a person do if a subject vested with power offers them to compromise their moral convictions in order to achieve some higher goal? Another significant factor is the phenomenon of dehumanization. When we strip other people of their human qualities, labeling them enemies, subhumans, or inferior beings, we create fertile ground for justifying cruelty towards them. This technique, unfortunately, is regularly found in propaganda campaigns, military conflicts, and even in everyday disputes. When an individual stops seeing another person as a person, empathy fades, and causing harm becomes more likely. Pay attention to the language that is currently used in social and political debates. How often are entire groups of people reduced to derogatory labels and prejudices? Such reduction to stereotypes weakens empathy and mutual understanding, creating a dangerous us versus them mentality. However, dehumanization is only one piece of the overall picture. Social roles within group dynamics also play a significant role in this process. A classic example is the Stanford prison experiment, conducted by Zimbardo. In this study, college students were randomly assigned the roles of guards or prisoners in an artificially created prison environment. Within a few days, the guards began to exhibit cruel behavior, while the prisoners showed signs of deep stress and submission. The most striking thing was how quickly the participants forgot about their individuality and fully immersed themselves in the roles assigned to them. A logical question arises: to what extent is our essence shaped by the social roles that society prescribes for us? Do we possess genuine freedom of self-expression, or are we unwittingly playing out scenarios imposed by the world around us? The influence of authority, depersonalization, and group psychology are not just abstract concepts. They are really present in our lives, defining our thinking, behavior, and perception of other people. We encounter them at work, in educational institutions, in the virtual space of social networks, and even in the family circle. Awareness of these forces is the first step towards resisting their pressure. But what is the line that, once crossed, leads a respectable person to commit an unworthy act? Often this moment escapes attention. It all starts with minor concessions, with silent consent, when we witness injustice, with a single act of submission. Gradually, these small decisions accumulate, creating a dangerous trend that can lead to serious moral failings. Take a moment to consider: have you ever acted against your beliefs because it seemed easier or safer? And what were the consequences of such a choice? In the following narrative, we will carefully examine methods for identifying critical situations that foreshadow a loss of control. An important aspect will be studying ways to strengthen psychological resilience to the destructive influence of external factors. But first, we must address a fundamental question: are there individuals who possess absolute immunity to the Lucifer effect, or is this a threat hanging over everyone? The answer to this question will force us to reconsider established ideas about ourselves and the deep essence of human nature. So, let's try to figure out if there are people who are not afraid of the Lucifer effect. Regrettably, there are no absolutely invulnerable individuals. Psychologists continue to debate the significance of personal qualities in the context of resisting corruption and moral decay. Undoubtedly, characteristics such as developed empathy, deep self-awareness, and moral fortitude can serve as a kind of defense. But the reality is that under certain circumstances, everyone can succumb to negative influence. Imagine that each of us carries the potential for both committing incredibly good deeds and manifesting terrifying evil. This dualism, inherent in human nature, serves as an inexhaustible topic for reflection in literature, religious teachings, and philosophical treatises. The famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung identified this side of our psyche as the shadow, a collection of hidden, often suppressed aspects of our personality that we prefer to ignore. Jung argued that in order to achieve holistic self-knowledge, it is necessary to face this shadow and integrate it into our conscious perception. Recall, have you ever experienced sudden bouts of anger or envy, so strong that they amazed you? Have you ever said or done something in a fit of passion that you later bitterly regretted? This is the manifestation of the shadow in action. If not restrained, this shadow can grow and manifest in ways that resemble the Lucifer effect, that is, push you to commit immoral acts. However, there is also good news. Awareness is our main defense. By understanding the psychological mechanisms underlying moral failure, we gain the ability to resist them. Let's consider how these forces manifest in real life and what strategies we can use to combat them. One of the most sophisticated ways in which the human psyche bypasses moral principles is a mechanism known in psychology as moral disengagement. This concept, first developed by the prominent psychologist Albert Bandura, reveals how people inventively find justifications for their reprehensible actions, seeking to avoid the agonizing feeling of guilt or pangs of conscience. As an example, consider a situation where an individual convinces himself that reprehensible behavior is a universal norm or that a noble goal justifies the use of dishonest methods. Such rationalizations create a psychological gap between the person and his actions, which greatly facilitates the process of justifying even the most serious misconduct. To better understand how this mechanism manifests in real life, it is enough to consider a few common situations. For example, a student who gives in to the temptation to cheat on an exam may convince himself that this is just an isolated case with no serious consequences. Similarly, a manager who is unfair to their subordinates may justify their actions by the need to achieve the company's goals. In each of these cases, moral disengagement allows people to commit acts that directly contradict their deepest values and beliefs. The counterweight to this dangerous phenomenon is a concept that some psychologists call moral vigilance. It implies an active and critical reflection on one's actions and their potential consequences, even when it causes discomfort and mental anguish. When considering love and tolerance for unacceptable things, it is worth paying attention to the development of empathy as a powerful tool against dehumanization. When we perceive others as individuals with complex inner worlds, full of hopes, fears, and aspirations, causing harm becomes more difficult. Storytelling and genuine human relationships play an important role, reminding us of our shared humanity and breaking down erected barriers. At the societal level, leadership and collective responsibility play a key role in combating systems that perpetuate harm and allow the Lucifer effect on a large scale. History shows that charismatic leaders can both elevate and corrupt entire societies. Adolf Hitler, who manipulated fear and prejudice to justify atrocities, is an example of this. In contrast, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. used their influence to inspire positive change and resist injustice. Ultimately, we are faced with a defining question: which leader do we choose to follow, and how do our actions affect those around us? Regardless of whether we hold formal leadership positions, each of us has an impact on our family, social circle, and professional environment. The point is whether we direct this influence to spread compassion and equality or contribute to the entrenchment of evil and disunity. Take a moment to think about your life. Who do we look up to? What principles do these people embody? And just as importantly, what example do we set for those who look up to us? Reflecting on authority, moral disengagement, dehumanization, and leadership, it becomes clear that the confrontation between good and evil is not only an external struggle, but also an internal one that each of us faces daily. However, there is an inspiring truth. Circumstances can lead a person astray, but they can also lead us to outstanding displays of kindness, courage, and integrity. The same mechanisms that create monsters are capable of creating heroes. How can humanity stay on the right path? How can we cultivate the resilience to resist the charms of the Lucifer effect when it manifests itself? The answers to these questions await us ahead. In the following lines, we will discover effective methods to recognize and resist the forces that push us towards moral decay. These strategies have stood the test of time and the experience of psychologists, spiritual mentors, and ordinary people who have faced extraordinary challenges. And it should be remembered that the final insight we are about to consider has the greatest transformative power. This awareness can change not only the perception of others, but also the view of oneself. To successfully resist the forces that can lead us astray, we must understand that awareness alone is not enough. Recognizing the psychological mechanisms of the Lucifer effect is certainly an important step, but effective strategies are needed to effectively counteract their influence. Let's turn to these strategies, starting with the concept of moral courage. Moral courage is the ability to act in accordance with ethical principles, and defend what you believe is right, even when faced with fear, resistance, or personal loss. It is this inner quality that motivates a person to rebel against injustice, stand up for those who are weak and defenseless, or admit their own mistakes, even when silence seems like the easier and safer path. However, moral courage is not an innate gift, but rather a virtue that we develop in ourselves through conscious effort, constant practice, and deep reflection. Let us recall iconic figures in history, such as Rosa Parks, whose refusal to give up her seat on a bus sparked the flame of the civil rights movement in the United States. Or imagine the whistleblowers who boldly expose corruption schemes and abuses of power, often risking their well-being and careers. These people certainly experienced fear, but they consciously chose action despite its paralyzing effect. How can we cultivate this moral courage in ourselves so that it becomes an integral part of our lives? First and foremost, it's essential to clearly define your fundamental values, the principles that hold paramount importance for you. This could include honesty, integrity, compassion, fairness, responsibility, or any other moral compass. It's important to reflect on situations where you've faced a moral choice. Did you act in accordance with your beliefs, or did you compromise your conscience for personal gain or convenience? To strengthen moral resilience, it's helpful to mentally prepare for difficult situations. Imagine witnessing a colleague being bullied. How would you react? Or, for example, being pressured to carry out a questionable order. By mentally rehearsing different courses of action, you increase your readiness to act decisively in real-life scenarios. Equally important is surrounding yourself with people who share your convictions. Strong friendships with principled individuals create a kind of buffer against negative influences. The support of like-minded individuals instills confidence and helps you resist pressure from the environment and authority figures. But what do you do when you encounter circumstances that seem to test your morality to its limits? In such cases, situational awareness becomes invaluable. This involves the ability to notice subtle cues and understand how various factors influence people's behavior. Pay attention to the unspoken rules that prevail in a group. What is considered normal and what is not? It's worth questioning established norms and rules, especially if there are signs of injustice. It's important to ask yourself whether following convention is simply a result of conformity. Even seemingly insignificant actions can trigger significant changes. Often, people feel powerless in the face of large-scale problems, but even a small expression of disagreement can have an impact. An example of this is the domino effect. An honest act by one person can stimulate similar actions by others. For instance, openly objecting to unethical actions in the workplace may seem like a risky move, but it can inspire colleagues to express their own concerns. Similarly, showing kindness and empathy in everyday interactions can challenge the trends toward dehumanization that permeate modern society. It's essential to emphasize the importance of self-reflection. Socrates once remarked that a life devoid of self-examination is not worth living. Self-reflection allows you to identify your own biases, acknowledge mistakes, and learn from them. It's not about achieving perfection, but about constant progress, about striving to become better and more aware with each passing day. Make it a habit to engage in regular self-reflection, asking yourself questions aimed at understanding your own motives and actions. For example, you might ask yourself, what factors drove my actions during the day? Did I show due respect and empathy towards others? In what situations did I choose to remain silent when I should have expressed my position? Such reflections contribute to the development of awareness and integrity in your own actions. However, a deeper question arises. Is it ever possible to completely overcome the influence of the Lucifer effect? The answer to this question may vary depending on personal beliefs and social norms, but a key element is the development of heroic imagination, a concept proposed by psychologist Philip Zimbardo. Heroic imagination is a way of thinking that enables ordinary people to perform extraordinary deeds when faced with moral dilemmas. It's the belief that every person is capable of changing a situation for the better, that heroism is not the prerogative of the chosen few, but is accessible to everyone. To develop heroic imagination, start by looking for opportunities to perform small heroic acts. This could involve standing up for those who are being treated unfairly, volunteering to help those in need, or simply choosing kindness and compassion in all your daily interactions. Of particular importance is studying the biographies of outstanding individuals whose lives have embodied heroism, from historical figures to modern leaders striving for change. Their stories serve as a reminder that courage and compassion are qualities available to each of us. In this regard, a legitimate question arises: what is the deepest and most important realization that can fundamentally change our perception of ourselves and our role in the world? The answer lies in recognizing the inextricable interconnectedness of all humanity. The line between good and evil does not lie between different social groups or states, but runs through the heart of every person. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn accurately noted, the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart. This understanding is both humbling and inspiring. It serves as a reminder that within each of us lies the capacity to both inflict harm and bring healing. However, it also grants us the power of choice. Every moment presents new opportunities for honest actions, resisting the temptation of darkness and contributing to the construction of a world founded on compassion and justice. In the concluding section, we will delve deeper into how these ideas can be implemented in your own life. Together, we will explore concrete actions aimed not only at overcoming the Lucifer effect, but also at becoming a source of positive change in a world that desperately needs it. Previously, we examined the psychological factors that can drive decent people to commit atrocities, such as the influence of authority, moral disengagement, dehumanization, and the impact of group psychology. We also explored how awareness, moral courage, empathy, and self-reflection serve as barriers against these forces. Now it's crucial to emphasize what each person can do today, not only to remain resilient but also to radiate light in difficult situations. The primary task is to recognize one's own influence. Regardless of how modest or imperceptible one's role may seem, each individual possesses the ability to shape their environment. In every interaction, they contribute to establishing the norms and values that guide those around them. Do they foster an atmosphere of goodwill, fairness, and responsibility, or do they, through their silence, allow harmful actions to take root? Imagine the story of someone whose seemingly insignificant actions had a colossal impact on the course of history. Oskar Schindler, a German entrepreneur during World War II, initially driven by a thirst for profit, managed to direct his resources to save over 1,000 Jews from the horrors of the Holocaust. His biography serves as a stark testament to the fact that even in the darkest periods of history, one person can effect profound change. To follow this example, extraordinary circumstances are not required. You can start small, in your neighborhood, at work, or even within your family. Speak out when you see injustice, support those who feel lonely, and combat stereotypes and prejudices that divide people. These small steps, multiplied by the efforts of many, can transform not only individual destinies, but also entire communities. Another important point is self-education and enlightening others. Knowledge is the most powerful weapon against manipulation and moral decay. Study history, psychology, and philosophy to better understand how and why people make certain choices. Disseminate wisdom, avoiding a mentoring or didactic tone, and strive to initiate deep discussions that stimulate intellectual development and personal growth. For instance, have you ever considered how the stories that permeate our consciousness shape our beliefs? Cinema, literature, and mass media often influence our perception of morality and immorality, justice and injustice. If you strive for a perception that challenges your established views and expands your horizons, you cultivate a deeper and more humane understanding of the surrounding reality. Let's also consider the issue of unwavering resolve in the face of external pressure. Defending principles often entails certain risks, social rejection, problems at work, and even personal losses. This is why resilience is so important. Resilience is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in accordance with one's beliefs, even when fear is present. To strengthen your resilience, it is necessary to focus on practices that support your mental and emotional health. This could include meditation, journaling, or consultations with experienced mentors and close friends. Surround yourself with a community of like-minded individuals who inspire and support you. In today's world, where everyone strives for success, it's important to remember that resilience is not a quality that can be developed in isolation. It flourishes in close connection with the people around us. However, what happens when we face the inevitable setbacks that lie in wait for everyone on life's journey? Undoubtedly, there will be moments when fear or external pressure will overcome our rational decisions, and we will commit actions that we will later deeply regret. It is in such moments that the concept of self-forgiveness becomes particularly important. Self-forgiveness should not be seen as an excuse for destructive behavior. Rather, it is an honest acknowledgement of one's own mistakes, accepting full responsibility for one's actions, and a firm commitment to strive for better in the future. The essence of self-forgiveness lies in recognizing that failures are an integral part of the human experience, and personal growth often occurs through confronting one's own shortcomings. Take a moment to consider if there have been situations in your life where you failed to live up to your own values and principles. How did you react to this failure? Did you draw valuable lessons from what happened, or did you allow this negative experience to define your future? The ability to forgive oneself and others is one of the most powerful tools for breaking free from the vicious cycles of negativity perpetuated by the so-called Lucifer effect. This effect describes how ordinary people can commit terrible acts, succumbing to the influence of a situation or authority. Self-forgiveness allows one to move forward with renewed clarity of mind and a clear purpose, unburdened by the weight of past mistakes. Instead of drowning in a sea of guilt or gnawing resentment, it is worth turning to a deep awareness of the interconnectedness of all humanity. Recognizing that the line between light and darkness runs through the heart of every person allows you to look at others and yourself with greater compassion. This understanding in no way justifies destructive actions, but it does provide an opportunity to approach the world with empathy and a sincere desire for healing, rather than from a position of judgment. It is necessary to think about the effect our actions have, like ripples on water. Every decision, even the most insignificant, creates waves that spread throughout the world. Do our actions contribute to disunity and harm, or do they unite people and inspire hope? Imagine a society where each person takes responsibility for their choices, where people stand up to the forces that divide and dehumanize, and where everyone strives to create an atmosphere that fosters compassion and integrity. This is not a utopian dream, but a perfectly achievable reality that can be built by making conscious decisions every day. In conclusion of this reasoning, it is worth inviting the reader to reflect on the knowledge gained and ask themselves, how can I apply it in my life? How to recognize and resist the forces that lead away from true values? How can I contribute to creating a world where good triumphs over darkness? Finding answers to moral questions is not an easy task, but it is certainly justified. After all, the decisive battle between light and darkness unfolds not on battlefields or in philosophical treatises, but in the heart of every person, every day. In moments of moral choice, it is worth remembering that everyone has the power to choose, resist temptation, and bring good into a world that so desperately needs it. The main question is whether a person is ready to accept this challenge and take the side